The challenge. The arena floated above a dying star, its black walls glowing with streams of golden energy. Inside, 100,000 aliens filled the stands, their voices mixing into a roar that shook the metal floors. On every giant screen, a single name flashed over and over: Elias Kane, human contender. It had been decades since a human had entered the kill quota trials. The rules were simple: reach the number of confirmed kills set by the Galactic Council, a target so high that even the deadliest species needed years to achieve it. The quota wasn't just a game. It was a way for the galaxy to measure who ruled the battlefield. Today, the gates to the trial arena slid open, and Kane stepped out. He wore light body armor and carried only a compact rifle, a combat knife, and a small pack on his back. No heavy exosuit, no drones, no visible backup. The alien commentators burst into laughter. "Is this a joke?" one scoffed, his voice echoing through the speakers. "A human? Alone? This will be over before the first meal break." Kane didn't respond. He simply looked around the massive first zone, a canyon littered with jagged black stone. Each shadow hid movement. Above, alien buzzards circled in slow arcs, waiting for a meal. The trial's first wave began. Predator drones with curved, blade-like wings screamed through the air, scanning for heat signatures. The alien crowd cheered, already picturing the human being torn apart in seconds. But Kane moved differently. He didn't fire wildly like most contenders. Instead, he dropped into cover, studying the pattern of the drone's flight. He waited until one passed directly overhead. Then, with a single burst from his rifle, he took it down. The second and third followed within minutes. By the time the first hour ended, Kane had dismantled an entire squadron of drones, scavenging parts from their wreckage. He strapped the blades onto his forearms, creating makeshift close combat weapons. The crowd's laughter began to fade, replaced by murmurs. The alien commentators hesitated. "He's adapting fast," one admitted. "Too fast," another muttered. The canyon grew darker as the artificial light dimmed. The second wave began. 6-legged war beasts, their hides like living armor, each one larger than Kane. They charged in a pack, claws tearing through the stone floor. Kane didn't run. He moved toward a cluster of rock pillars, drawing the beasts after him. At the last moment he climbed, using the pillars as a trap. The first beast slammed into the rock, breaking its own leg. The others snarled and circled. Kane leapt down, striking with the salvaged drone blades. One by one the beasts fell. His breathing stayed steady. His movements stayed precise. By midday, Kane had already reached a kill count that most competitors needed weeks to match. Somewhere in the control room, the overseers of the trials leaned closer to their monitors, trying to find any sign of cheating. They found none. Kane took a short break by a ruined wall, pulling a ration bar from his pack. He wasn't even sweating heavily. The alien crowd was now restless. Some still shouted for his defeat, but others began chanting his name. It was rare in the trials for anyone to win over the crowd this early. The next challenge activated. A swarm of hunter drones, faster and more intelligent than the first wave. They moved like coordinated predators, trying to flank him. Kane triggered a small EMP charge built from the drone parts he'd taken earlier. Half the swarm dropped instantly. The rest came at him in a frenzy, but he was already moving, slashing with his arm blades and firing short bursts. The scoreboard updated. Kane's numbers were climbing at a pace no one had seen before. By the end of the day's first phase, he had completed nearly half of the kill quota. The alien commentators fell silent, their expressions shifting from mockery to unease. Kane didn't celebrate. He simply looked at the next sealed gate, knowing another challenge waited beyond. As the heavy doors began to grind open, revealing shadows and the low growl of something massive, the crowd held its breath. In the stands, one alien whispered, "If he keeps this pace, he'll finish in 2 days." And from the slight smirk on Kane's face, it was clear that was exactly his plan. First blood. The gate groaned open, revealing a tunnel that sloped down into darkness. The sound of dripping water echoed from somewhere deep inside, and the air smelled of rust and old blood. Kane stepped in without hesitation. The alien audience leaned forward. Many had seen warriors hesitate here, because everyone knew what waited in the labyrinth zone. The war beasts, monsters bred over centuries for the trials. They weren't mindless predators. They hunted with patience and cunning, The tunnel walls widened into a huge cavern lit by bioluminescent fungi. Their pale blue glow cast long shadows, and in those shadows something moved. Kane knelt, touching the damp ground. He felt vibrations. Multiple heavy footsteps circling in silence. A deep growl rolled through the cavern. Then another, and another. From the darkness, 3 war beasts emerged, each as tall as a transport shuttle, armored in chitons so thick that blaster bolts often bounced off. In the stands, the commentators smirked. Let's see how fast the human dies now. The beasts began to fan out. Kane didn't move. Instead, he studied their movements, the way their armored plates shifted when they turned, the brief gaps when they raised their claws. The first beast lunged. Kane sidestepped, driving one of his salvaged drone blades into the exposed joint between its armor plates. The creature roared in pain, stumbling. The crowd gasped. The other 2 charged together, claws tearing chunks from the stone flaws. Kane sprinted toward a stalagmite cluster, forcing the beast to funnel into a narrow space. One got stuck for a split second. That was all Kane needed. He vaulted onto its back, plunging his blade into its neck. The wounded beast thrashed, smashing him against the cavern wall. Pain shot through his ribs, but he didn't stop. He drove the blade deeper until it went limp. Blood, dark and steaming, pooled on the stone. The smell filled the cavern, and the remaining beast grew more cautious, circling. Then a new sound echoed. Boots on stone. Kane's eyes narrowed. From the shadow stepped Threx of the Zoru, a champion known across the galaxy for his brutal kills and his habit of eliminating rivals during the trials. His scaled skin shimmered in the dim light, and his weapon, a serrated plasma spear, dripped with fresh blood. Kane, Threx hissed, you've embarrassed enough warriors today. Let's end this. The audience exploded into cheers. This was rare. 2 living contenders in the same zone. It was allowed, but it usually meant one wouldn't leave alive. Kane said nothing. Threx lunged with incredible speed. Kane dodged, but the spear grazed his shoulder, burning through armor and skin. He gritted his teeth and kept moving. The surviving beast, confused by the fight, roared and charged them both. Threx turned, aiming to kill it for the points, but Kane was faster. Using the beast's own momentum, he leapt onto its side and drove his blade straight through its eye. The creature collapsed instantly. The scoreboard updated. Kane's kill. Threx snarled in rage and attacked again. Kane caught the spear shaft, twisting it and slamming the Zoru into the wall. The impact cracked stone. Kane held the spear tip against Threx's throat. You're still alive because I let you be, Kane said quietly. Walk away. Humiliation burned in Threx's eyes, but he knew better. Then to push further, he spat on the ground and backed away into the shadows. Kane retrieved his pack, wiped the blood from his weapons, and moved toward the exit tunnel. Was buzzing. They had just seen the human beat a war beast, humiliate a champion, and walk away without fear. In the control room, one of the trial overseers whispered, "If he keeps this pace, he'll break every record we have." Kane didn't care about records. He cared about finishing, fast. The next gate opened, revealing a violent, crackling light. The infamous storm pit. Lightning arced between jagged metal towers. Acid rain hissed as it hit the ground. The air was thick with ozone, and the smell of burnt flesh carried on the wind. Somewhere inside, more enemies waited. Kane stepped forward without hesitation. The gate closed behind him, sealing him in, and the galaxy leaned closer, knowing this was the zone where even legends had fallen, the assassin's game. The storm pit was a nightmare of sound and light. Lightning forked across the sky every few seconds, striking the metal towers and sending blinding flashes across the ground. Acid rain fell in sheets, sizzling as it ate through stone. Kane moved fast, keeping low. The armor plates from the war beasts and scavenged drone parts now formed a crude shield on his back. Each step was measured. The ground was slick, and one slip could mean death. He wasn't alone. He could feel it. At first, it was only a shadow on the far side of the pit, then the glint of metal through the rain. The watchers in the arena's stands were murmuring now. Some recognized the shape instantly. It was Virus, a professional killer, not a trial contestant. Her name wasn't on the roster because she wasn't here for the quota. She was here for him. The Galactic Council had decided Kane was too dangerous to let finish the trials. A public win would shake the balance of power, so they'd hired the best. And Virus never failed. She stepped into view, her armor sleek and almost invisible against the storm-lit sky, twin plasma blades humming at her sides. Her voice came through the storm cold and clear. "You've impressed them, human, but this is where your story ends." Kane didn't bother answering. His eyes scanned the battlefield. The towers, the metal debris, the shifting arcs of lightning. He was already looking for ways to turn the pit into a trap. Virus moved like a phantom, each step fluid. The first blade strike came without warning. Kane barely blocked with his forearm plate. Sparks hissed, the force driving him back. The crowd gasped as the fight became a blur. Blade against blade, lightning flashing around them, acid rain burning their armor. Kane noticed something. Every time lightning struck the tallest tower, a surge of energy traveled through the ground into certain metal plates scattered across the pit, enough to kill anything standing on them. He let Virus push him back toward one of those spots, feigning exhaustion. She smirked, thinking she had him cornered. The next lightning strike hit. The ground beneath her lit up. Her armor shield flared, absorbing most of it. But Kane was already moving, using the distraction to slam his blade into the gap at her side. Virus staggered, the wound deep but not fatal. Kane pulled back, leaving her alive. Her eyes burned with fury, but also with something like respect. "You could have finished me," she said through clenched teeth. "Tell them to try harder," Kane replied, stepping past her. The assassin vanished into the storm, retreating. The council's plan had failed, and the crowd knew it. A human had not only survived their deadliest killer, he had spared her. Kane reached the far side of the pit where the next gate stood. Behind him, the storm roared, but ahead, the air was still and heavy. Beyond the gate was a dense alien jungle, its trees glowing faintly from the bioluminescent moss clinging to their trunks. The sound of sand. Range creatures echoed in the distance, but Kane wasn't moving yet. His instinct told him something. The jungle wasn't just the next challenge, it was a hunt, and he was the prey. In the control room, the overseers argued. "Send in more," one ordered. "He's not supposed to get this far," another snapped. The crowd was no longer just watching for sport. They were watching for history. And history was moving one step closer with every breath Kane took. He tightened the straps on his armor, adjusted the grip on his rifle, and stepped into the jungle. His silhouette disappeared into the glow of alien trees, and the gate closed behind him. Somewhere inside, dozens of red eyes blinked open. The hunt had begun, the storm pit's gift. The jungle swallowed Kane whole. Giant trees stretched hundreds of meters into the air, their twisted roots forming walls and tunnels across the forest floor. Every leaf dripped with a faint green glow, making the shadows seem alive. The air was thick and heavy, each breath carrying the scent of wet earth and something sharp, like metal. Kane slowed his pace, his boots sinking slightly into the moss-covered ground. His eyes moved constantly, scanning, listening. The jungle was quiet, too quiet. Then came the sound, a low rhythmic clicking. It echoed from all sides. In the stands, veteran spectators leaned forward. They knew that sound. The sire hunters were here. They weren't animals. They were a sentient species bred for tracking and killing. Faster than most predators and smart enough to set traps, Kane spotted the first one. Clinging upside down to a tree branch, its limbs long and insect-like, twin blades folded against its arms, its many eyes glimmered in the dim light, watching him without a sound. Then two more appeared, then 5, then 10. The Zir didn't rush in. They moved in a tightening circle, clicking their mandibles in a rhythm that was almost like speech. Kane backed toward a cluster of roots, letting them think he was trapped. His hand reached into his pack, pulling out the EMP charge he had used in the storm pit. It was almost dead, but still enough for one last surge. When the first Zir leapt, Kane triggered it. A burst of blue light exploded through the air, frying the neural sensors in their hunting masks. The closest hunters dropped. Stunned, Kane didn't waste the opening. He was a blur, moving between them, striking at the weak points in their exoskeletons. The forest floor turned slick with black blood, but the Zir were fast learners. The remaining ones adapted, spreading out and attacking from different angles. Kane barely ducked a blade that sliced through a tree trunk. He threw himself into a roll, grabbing one of the fallen hunter's weapons, a curved plasma blade that hissed as it cut the air. The weapon was perfectly balanced, and Kane's movements became faster, sharper. One by one, The hunters fell, their bodies slumped among the roots, the clicking sound fading. By the time it was over, Kane stood alone, breathing hard. His armor was scored and burned in several places, but he was still on his feet. His kill count spiked, the scoreboard above the arena lit up. The human had just broken the day one kill record for the entire history of the trials. The crowd erupted into chaos. Some screamed his name. Others shouted that the trials were rigged. Kane didn't care. He knelt beside one of the fallen Zir, studying its armor. With quick, practiced hands, he stripped it for parts, attaching the plasma blade to his back and taking a small cloaking device from its belt. It would only work for a short time, but in the next challenge, seconds might mean survival. As he moved deeper into the jungle, the trees began to thin. The glow faded, replaced by the sharp glare of artificial lights ahead. Through the foliage, he saw the next zone. An open arena filled with moving walls, mechanical turrets, and shifting platforms. It was known as the Mach maze, and no one had ever cleared it on the first try. In the control room, an overseer hissed into a comm, "Send the command, now, before he finishes this zone." Somewhere inside the maze, machinery stirred. A hidden panel opened, and a massive quadruped war machine powered up. Its cannons glowed, its armored hide gleaming like molten steel. Kane stepped from the jungle into the maze, and the gates slammed shut behind him. From above, the war machine locked onto him. Its targeting sensors flashed red, and then, in the silence before the first shot, Kane smiled. Breaking records. The war machine's first cannon blast turned the air into fire. Kane dove sideways, the explosion tearing through the platform where he'd stood a heartbeat earlier. Shrapnel clanged off his armor as he rolled into cover behind a shifting wall. The machine maze was alive. Its walls slid and rotated without warning, opening new paths while closing others. Above, turrets tracked movement, firing bursts of plasma that cut through metal like paper. The war machine wasn't just chasing him. It was hurting him, forcing him into choke points where its cannons could end him in one strike. Kane's eyes narrowed. He understood the trap, and he knew how to turn it around. Moving low and fast, Kane sprinted through a narrowing gap, sparks showering from the walls as they ground together behind him. He ducked into a shadowed alcove, pulling the cloaking device he'd taken from the Zir hunter. The moment it activated, his outline shimmered and faded. The machine's sensors swept past without locking on. Kane grinned. He had seconds, maybe less. He climbed a maintenance ladder on the side of a moving wall, scaling it until he reached a service platform above the arena. From here he could see the war machine's back. Thick armor plates, but with heat vents glowing faintly between them. Kane leapt, landing hard on the machine's rear plating. The impact jolted through his legs, but he didn't stop. Using his plasma blade, he jammed it into one of the vents, the Medi. All screamed as it melted. The machine shuddered, its cannons firing wildly into the walls. In the control room, alarms blared. Overseers shouted over one another, shut it down before he... Too late, Kane ripped open the vent, tossing in the last of his EMP charges. The blast disabled the targeting systems instantly. The war machine staggered, its legs locking before it crashed to the ground with a thunderous impact. The crowd erupted. Some in cheers, some in stunned silence. The scoreboard flashed red as his kill count surged past another record. Kane didn't pause to celebrate. He scavenged from the wreck, pulling out a shoulder-mounted plasma cannon and a cluster of grenades. He knew the next challenge would be worse. The maze walls began to shift again, but this time the changes weren't random. They were forming a straight path to the exit gate. Kane knew that meant one thing. The overseers had decided to let him pass to the final stage, not out of mercy, but because they wanted his death to be public and spectacular. He stepped through the exit into a circular chamber. The walls were black, the floor polished metal. In the center, a massive gate slowly rose, revealing the largest creature Kane had seen yet. The apex beast, a predator the size of a dropship, stepped forward. Its four glowing eyes locked onto him. Its hide was a shifting armor of organic and metallic plates. Its breath was a roar of steam. The audience was silent now. They knew this was the challenge that ended every record run. No one had ever killed it. Kane adjusted the plasma cannon on his shoulder, his movements calm, deliberate. He wasn't going to charge. He wasn't going to rush. This wasn't a fight of speed. It was a fight of patience. The apex roared and lunged. Kane fired once, the plasma bolt slamming into its shoulder. The blast barely scorched the armor. The bees, countered with a swipe of its claw, the force of it shattering part of the floor. Kane retreated, not in fear, but in calculation. His eyes tracked the beast's movements, noting how its armor shifted when it attacked, finding the tiny gaps. From the stands, someone whispered, "He's not fighting it, he's studying it." And in that moment, it became clear. Kane wasn't just here to win, he was here to do the impossible. The apex roared again, charging. The metal beneath Kane's boots shook, but his stance didn't break, because when the killing blow came, he wanted it to be in one strike. The apex hunt. The apex beast's roar shook the chamber. The sound was so deep it rattled Kane's bones. The creature's 4 eyes glowed like burning coals, locked onto him with a hunger that felt almost personal. The air smelled of ozone and blood. Kane stood still, letting the massive predator circle him. His hand rested lightly on the plasma cannon, but he didn't fire. Not yet. The crowd was restless. Some jeered, thinking the human was frozen in fear. Others had watched enough to know. Kane was never still without a reason. The apex's claws scraped sparks from the floor as it closed in. At the last moment, it lunged. Kane rolled to the side, the wind of its charge almost knocking him off his feet. His plasma cannon fired once, hitting a seam in the armor near its ribs. The shot burned through but didn't slow it down. Kane's eyes narrowed. He had learned 2 things. First, its armor shifted slightly slower when it turned to its left. Second, its breathing hitched after sudden bursts of movement. The apex charged again, this time slamming into a wall. Kane dived into a side alcove as chunks of metal fell from above. He glanced up, noticing the high catwalks and the massive lighting rigs hanging overhead. A plan began to form. He dashed across the chamber, firing to keep the apex's attention. The beast's fury grew with every missed strike, each roar louder than the last. Kane was pushing it, making it wreck. Less when it lunged again. He sprinted toward one of the thick support columns, sliding behind it just as the beast's bulk smashed into it. The impact cracked the column's base, sending vibrations up to the catwalk. From the stands, realization began to dawn. "He's not trying to pierce the armor," one alien muttered. "He's trying to bring the arena down on it." The apex spun, snapping at him. Kane darted away, leading it toward another column. Plasma fire and grenades tore through the supports. Each time the beast slammed into them, the structure above groaned a little more. But the apex was learning too. The next time he tried to bait it, it slowed, watching him. Kane smirked. Good. That meant it was focused entirely on him, not the real danger. He activated the Zir cloaking device, disappearing from its sight for a brief second. He sprinted to the far side of the arena, climbing a damaged lift shaft up to the catwalk. From above, he could see the whole battlefield. The apex prowled below, its head shifting back and forth, searching for him. Kane pulled the last of his grenades, attaching them to the weakest lighting rig. He shouted, the sound echoing. The apex's head snapped up. It roared and leapt, claws outstretched. The moment it touched the rig, Kane fired the plasma cannon directly into the grenade cluster. The explosion was deafening. The rig came crashing down, dragging cables and steel beams with it. The full weight slammed into the apex, driving it to the ground. But Kane didn't wait. He jumped from the catwalk, landing hard on the beast's back. His plasma blade ignited, driving into the exposed gap where the beams had shattered the armor. The apex's roar turned into a shuddering gasp, then silence. The scoreboard blazed. Kill quota reached. Time 48 hours. The crowd erupted. The sound was like a living thing, half in awe, half in fear. Kane stepped off the apex's corpse, his armor scorched, his face calm. In the control room, overseers stared at the screens in disbelief. The human had done the impossible, and now the galaxy would never forget his name. But Kane didn't stay to bask in the victory. He simply looked up at the cameras and said, "Send my regards to whoever's next." The gates to the exit opened. The final part of the trials awaited, and this time, the real game would begin. The aftershock. The gate slid open, revealing a long corridor lit by white light. Kane stepped through, his boots echoing on the metal floor. Behind him, the arena was silent. The apex's body still lay in the chamber, a reminder to the galaxy that the impossible had just been done. The corridor ended in a massive platform overlooking the entire stadium. Hundreds of alien officials, council members, and military leaders stood waiting. Their robes shimmered with the colors of their worlds, their eyes locked on him. One step forward, a tall figure with silver skin and a voice like glass. "Commander Kane of Earth," he said, "you have broken every record in the history of the kill quota trials. You have done in 2 days what entire civilizations could not do in years." He paused, then smiled thinly. "We would like to offer you an arrangement. Join the Council's elite forces and you will have power beyond imagination, wealth, influence, command over fleets." The crowd in the stands leaned forward, waiting for the human's answer. Kane looked at them, then at the officials. His face was unreadable. "I didn't come here for your approval," Kane said, his voice carrying through the entire stadium. "I came here to remind you that Earth is not to be underestimated." The silver-skinned official's smile faded. "And if we refuse to respect that reminder?" he asked. Kane took a step forward, his shadow stretching across the floor. "Then you'll learn what 2 days was just a warm-up, a riset." But went through the crowd, a mix of shock, fear, and something else. The council members whispered urgently to each other. Some called for his arrest, others for negotiation. Suddenly, the giant screens above the arena lit up. They showed live feeds from across the galaxy. Human warships dropping out of hyperspace near key council-controlled worlds, their weapons powered but not firing. A silent message: "We're here, and we're ready." Gasps filled the stadium. The officials froze, realizing the truth. Kane hadn't come here alone. This wasn't just a contest. It was a demonstration. Kane turned toward the exit ramp, not looking back. "Keep your titles, keep your politics," he said. "Earth doesn't need your permission to stand at the top." Security forces moved to block his path, but they stopped when a deafening roar filled the air. A human dropship descending through the stadium's open ceiling. Its engines shook the ground, blowing the robes of the officials like leaves in the wind. A side hatch opened and a voice called out over the speakers, "Commander, your ride's here." Kane climbed aboard without another word. The dropship lifted, tilting to give the entire arena one last view of the man who had shattered their greatest trial. As it rose into the sky, Kane looked down at the silent crowd. "Tell your people," he said over the comms, "the age of underestimating humanity is over." The dropship roared upward, disappearing into the clouds. In the days that followed, the galaxy's networks exploded with footage of the trials. Alien leaders debated what it meant. Some called Kane a hero, others a threat. But no one could ignore what had happened. On Earth, Kane was welcomed as a legend. The message he had delivered was clear. In a galaxy of predators, humans weren't prey, they were the new hunters. And somewhere, in the shadow of deep space, Kane prepared for the next challenge, because he knew the galaxy wouldn't just remember what he did, it would try to stop him from doing it again.